Under the dim glow of a single desk lamp, the black phone sat silently on Dr. Daniel Nguyen's weathered oak desk, an unassuming object that seemed to pulse with an eerie, unspoken authority. It was 8 o'clock on a crisp autumn evening in New York City, where the skyline shimmered with the dazzling lights of towering skyscrapers. Yet, within the confines of Daniel's modest brownstone, the air was thick with a suffocating loneliness. His wife, Clara, had boarded an early morning flight to Chicago to visit her ailing mother, leaving behind a void that echoed through the house. Their 6-year-old son, Ethan, with his infectious giggle and boundless curiosity, had been whisked away by the nanny to stay with Daniel's brother-in-law. Alone in the quiet, Daniel sat slumped in his chair, his gaze drifting between the phone and the half-empty coffee mug beside it. Should he order pizza, venture out for a proper meal, or simply reheat the leftovers languishing in the fridge? The mundane decision felt impossibly heavy, as if it carried the weight of his solitude. At 42, Dr. Daniel Nguyen was a renowned anesthesiologist of Vietnamese descent, his salt and pepper hair and deep, soulful eyes betraying a life of hard-earned experience. His gentle smile, though rare, could light up a room, a remnant of the warmth he reserved for his family. To the outside world, his life appeared idyllic: a successful career, a loving wife, and a bright, joyful son. But beneath the surface, invisible pressures gnawed at him. The relentless demands of his profession, the constant need to prove himself in a competitive field, and the quiet fear that he was failing to balance it all. Tonight, that fear manifested as a hollow ache in his chest, a sense that he was adrift in a city that never slept, yet left him feeling utterly alone. The shrill ring of the phone shattered the stillness, its sound slicing through the air like a blade. Daniel's heart lurched as he reached for the receiver, his voice low and weary. "Hello, this is Dr. Daniel Nguyen." A man's voice responded from the other end, clipped and chillingly composed, sending a shiver down Daniel's spine. "Dr. Nguyen? Do not hang up." Daniel's brow furrowed, a prickle of unease creeping into his chest. "Who is this? What's going on?" There was a pause, heavy and menacing, before the voice continued. "Say hello to your father, Ethan." Daniel's blood ran cold. Then, faint but unmistakable, came the small, trembling voice of his son. "Hi, Dad. It's Ethan. Can you hear me?" Daniel gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles whitened, his voice breaking with desperation. "Ethan, where are you? Tell me where you are." The man's voice cut in, smooth and devoid of empathy. "Calm down, doctor. Your son is with us, safe and well cared for. He'll be returned to you, provided you do exactly as I say." A wave of icy dread washed over Daniel, his mind reeling as the reality sank in. This was no prank. His son had been kidnapped. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing against his chest as his heart pounded. He fought to steady his voice, though it trembled with barely contained panic. "What do you want?" The man chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that made Daniel's skin crawl. "Your patient, Richard Harper, is scheduled for heart surgery tomorrow, correct?" "Yes," Daniel replied, his throat tight. "Good. Ensure he doesn't wake up from the procedure. That's all. Do this, and your son comes home." The line went dead with a sharp click. Daniel stood frozen, the receiver still pressed to his ear, staring at the black phone as if it were a venomous creature. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "This can't be happening." The phone, once a mundane tool of communication, had transformed into a harbinger of terror. It sat there, silent yet malevolent, a conduit for the nightmare that had invaded his life. Daniel sank into his chair, his hands clutching his head as a storm of fear, anger, and confusion raged within him. Richard Harper was a wealthy hotel magnate, a man whose name commanded respect across the country. Why would someone want him dead? And Ethan, his bright, curious boy who loved building model rockets and asking endless questions about the stars. Where was he? Who were these people holding him? Desperate to cling to hope, Daniel dialed his brother-in-law's number, praying that Ethan was safe and this was all a cruel misunderstanding. But his brother-in-law's sleepy voice confirmed his worst fears. The nanny had taken Ethan that afternoon, and no one had seen him since. The room spun as Daniel's breath grew shallow, his mind racing for answers. The phone rang again, jolting him like a gunshot. He grabbed it, his voice shaking. "Hello? Who is this?" The same cold voice answered, dripping with menace. "You're thinking of doing something foolish, aren't you, doctor? Calling the police, perhaps? Don't. We're watching your every move. It's simple. Richard Harper dies on the operating table. You're an anesthesiologist. You know how to make it happen." Daniel's mind raced, grasping for any leverage. "Who are you? Why Harper? What does he have to do with you?" Another chilling laugh. "Questions won't help you, doctor. Do as I say, or you'll never see Ethan again." Click. The line went dead. Daniel stared at the phone, his hands trembling with a mix of rage and helplessness. He wanted to smash it, to destroy the object that had brought this horror into his life. But he knew it was his only link to his son. In his desperation, a name surfaced in his mind. Detective James Tran, an old friend from his college days. James was a grizzled, unconventional cop with a reputation for bending the rules. A man Clara jokingly called that rogue for his rough edges and shadowy connections. But James was loyal and relentless, the kind of person you called when the world turned upside down. Daniel dialed his number, his voice urgent. "James, I need you. Not here, not at your place. Meet me at my brother-in-law's house. Now." James, fresh from a tedious networking event, sensed the gravity in Daniel's tone. "I'm on my way," he said, no questions asked. At the brother-in-law's house, Daniel poured out the story, his words tumbling over each other as he fought to stay composed. James listened intently, his sharp eyes narrowing. "You did the right thing stalling the surgery," he said. "This guy knows too much about the hospital schedule. There's likely an insider. I'll dig into the staff records and see who's got connections that don't add up." Daniel nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "What about Ethan?" "I can't lose him, James." James placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "We'll find him. Keep the kidnapper talking as long as you can. Buy me time." That night, sleep eluded Daniel. He sat by the black phone, its presence a constant reminder of his predicament. Every creak in the house made him flinch, his eyes darting to Ethan's toys scattered in the corner. A red robot, a toy car, remnants of a life now hanging by a thread. He pictured Ethan's wide, trusting eyes, the way he'd cling to Daniel's leg after a long day at the hospital, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. The next morning, the phone rang again. The same voice, now laced with impatience. "Doctor, I hear the surgery's been postponed. I don't like games. What are you playing at?" Daniel forced calm into his voice. "It wasn't my call. There was an issue with the monitoring equipment. We need more time." "Don't test me," the voice snapped. "The surgery happens tomorrow morning. If Harper lives, you'll regret it." Click. Daniel's heart sank, but he had no time to wallow. He called the hospital director, Dr. Michael Chun, pleading to delay the surgery again, with vague excuses about equipment malfunctions. Michael, sensing Daniel's distress, reluctantly agreed. By Wednesday, Daniel arrived at the hospital feeling like a condemned man. Every glance from a colleague felt like an accusation. Was someone watching him, feeding information to the kidnapper? His paranoia grew, a shadow that clung to his every step. Meanwhile, James called with a lead. "We've got a suspect," he said. "A nurse named Sarah Vo from the cardiology unit. Her brother, Marcus Vo, has a rap sheet: extortion, harassment, and signs of mental instability. He could be our guy." Daniel's hope flickered, but it was tempered by fear. "Have you found Ethan?" "Not yet, but we're close. Keep the kidnapper on the line as long as you can." On Thursday morning, the phone rang again. This time, Ethan's voice came through, fragile but brave. "Dad, I'm okay, but I miss you. The man says this is the last time. Please do what he says." Tears welled in Daniel's eyes. "I will, Ethan. I'll bring you home." The kidnapper's voice returned, colder than ever. "Last chance, doctor. If Harper walks out of that surgery, your son's body will wash up in the Hudson." Click. The world seemed to collapse around Daniel. The surgery was set for Friday morning, and he faced an impossible choice: betray his oath as a doctor or risk his son's life. In the sterile chill of the operating room, Richard Harper lay on the table, a heavy-set man with disheveled hair, unaware of the storm raging in Daniel's mind. Daniel moved with mechanical precision, attaching monitors and checking vitals, but inside, he was unraveling. He couldn't kill a man, but he couldn't lose Ethan. As he prepared the anesthetic, an audacious plan formed, a technique he'd only read about in medical journals, a risky maneuver known as apparent death overdose, ADO. By carefully calibrating the dosage, he could stop Harper's heart temporarily while preserving brain function, creating the illusion of death long enough to satisfy the kidnapper. With the team watching, Daniel administered the drug. Harper's vitals flatlined, the monitor emitting a piercing beep. Gasps filled the room as the surgical team scrambled, but Daniel raised a hand. "He's gone," he said, his voice hollow, masking the truth. At noon, in a bustling New York street, a man in a raincoat, his hair dripping from the drizzle, placed Ethan into a taxi, handing the driver a slip of paper with Daniel's address. Ethan clutched his red robot, a faint smile breaking through his fear. The man vanished into the subway crowd. That afternoon, Daniel held Ethan tightly, tears streaming down his face as his son recounted being fed candy and playing games in a cramped apartment. James later confirmed Marcus Vaux's arrest. Driven by a twisted grudge against Harper, his estranged father who had abandoned him, Marcus had manipulated his sister Sarah into leaking hospital details, unaware of his true intentions. Before the press, Daniel explained his gamble. "I used the ADO technique to simulate Harper's death. It was a desperate move, but it bought us time. Thanks to Detective Tran, my son is safe." Harper, revived in intensive care, remained oblivious to how close he'd come to death. The black phone remained on Daniel's desk, no longer just a device, but a symbol of the fragility of life, the depths of a father's love, and the darkness that lurks in the human heart.